Big move. Big win. The moose is loose. Big move. Big win. The moose is loose. Big move. Big win. The moose is loose. Big. Big. Big.
There he is. Welcome, everybody, to the only slightly late show, but it's okay because we're staying on tonight until 11 p.m. Joining us is our intrepid co-host and fellow traveler, Dancing Dan, the Dancing Man.
How are you, Artie?
I'm okay. I guess you're in your new pipe smoking room.
I'm in my new pipe smoking room, recording room, all kinds, and it sounds a little bit echoey, does it?
It's a little bit, yeah.
Is it ball busting?
No, it's not a huge problem. It's pretty echoey, but the William Bird suggests that you may be in the pantry.
Well, same thing.
That's where the food is, so that's
right.
Not a terrible idea. So, Charles Latour says ID Jester is also live. ID Jester knows what time we do this show, so that is on him if he wants to do a different show at the same time. Besides, he is always on. So what is special about tonight?
He's always on.
Yeah,
he's always on.
He does like 1,000 videos a year.
So
he had this like summary of this is all the shit that I did in 2022. And then I responded with, yes, but what did you do after January 7th? So his output is absolutely bonzo.
Hey, so did you have a good New Year?
It was fine. Yeah, we didn't. Nothing crazy occurred here. I think there was a Scrabble game and some diet soda, and some. I mean, there was a little bit of scotch, but not too much. We don't do too much, so it's okay.
Yeah, no.
Try the pecan and peach beer, which is interesting to say the least.
Peach beer.
Peach and pecan beer.
Well, who makes that? That sounds interesting.
Shiner makes it. It's interesting.
Well,
you gotta give it.
We don't get that here.
So no, you guys have real beer up in Canada. You don't have to worry about getting the weird beer.
In Canada, I like that.
Canada, Soviet Canuckistan, as it was once said. The legend Fucko has ordered himself a copy of Corset Pocket. What's that? About $200? Pre-order.
Seriously,
is it a pre-order? Is it like available yet? What's the deal on that? Because there's been like some prototype copies, what I took to be prototype copies, floating around for a while. But I haven't actually seen any like non-content creator with a copy, so I assumed they were promotional prototypes made from the lovely and tasteful city water in Latrobe, Pennsylvania.
From the glass-lined whatever.
Yeah, you're in Canada, you're drinking that shit. I don't know what you're even doing up there.
It's
Might as well just drink the maple syrup. It's better for you.
More expensive.
Well, that's true. But Next War Supplement 3 is apparently in people's sweaty little hands. So that's pretty cool. I think that's something that I was like, I got to put that. I got to get a P500 in for that. And I never did. So I'll just have to get it, after the fact. Mitch Land puts all that stuff up for free. You can print and play it if you want. But I haven't looked at the material yet. I'm sure I'll want it. But then again, the GMT Next War stuff is something that seems to be perennially on our list of interesting things we would like to do, and we have yet to get to it. So
$225.
It's a big game, right? I mean, I'm not surprised. I can't imagine that they're printing tons and tons of copies of it. Is that coming out through Pacific Rim Publishing? Do I have that right? I want to say that's what it sounds like. And oddly enough, Corson was not on the Pacific Rim, but hey, you take what you can get as far as publishers are concerned.
$225. Have we gone mad?
Well, if it was Canadian dollars, that's about $1.99 US. So You know, there's that. So Multi-Man has, you know, people make this complaint about Multi-Man stuff a lot. And the Greatest Day Utah Beach, which I have pre-ordered, the pre-order price on that is $249. So, I mean, it's a huge game. It's bigger than Coruscant Pocket, but it's and I'm very excited about it. But it, you know, it ain't cheap. But you know, you play it once, and I figure you got your money's worth, right? So,
Well, how many counters are in that game, man?
in Utah Beach, there's 16 counter sheets and a half, 16 and a half counter sheets of 5/8 inch counters. I forget how many counters are on a 5/8 inch counter sheet.
Aren't the 88 counters on the sheet?
Oh, it's more than that.
Okay.
I forget the actual number, but it's more than 88. You'd have to have I don't know. Now I gotta know. Because I could tell you that there's 280 counters on a standard, you know, half-inch counter sheet. Standard, of course, right? So it's gonna be 8 so 11 times 16, so that's 176 counters. So
Per sheet.
multiply that by 16 and a half, so 16.5.
That's like 2,300 counters.
What the fuck?
Fucko, what do you mean? Can I please sit up? I'm sitting down.
That's almost 3,000 counters. It's a big game. Well, Dan's got to get the legendary forehead cam going, so it's all good. It's a little less hilarious than the Bill Thomas forehead cam, where the bottom of the camera angle is literally right here. That
Hold on.
like a year and a half for them to figure that out.
Hold on.
Oh, that's a good point. So I don't know what the price on the offhand. I did actually look at Heilsberg. Since I'm now doing the Labatai thing, but the price on that I think was well north of 200 as well, or maybe about 200 actually. And it's it's big, but it's the counter count is not that high. Heilsberg is the latest Labatai offering from Marshall Enterprises, and it's they don't print a ton, so if you didn't pre-order it, they don't like go as fast as like the Thin Red Line stuff. So Fortress Festung Hamburg shipped, and all the pre-orders I believe are now shipped. And for those curious about eligibility, people did start receiving copies in 2022. I verified that. Thank you, Fabrizio, for shipping all your stuff at the very end of 2022 again. But when like the copies went on sale to the public, they lasted like an hour or something like that before it sold out. They print like as many pre-orders as they got and like an extra, I don't know, 30 copies or something like. Don't quote me on that number. If Fabrizio wants to give us that number, that's fine. But they do not print a lot of extra copies, and neither does Marshall Enterprises. Prints 400 copies, and that's it. So if you want them, get in on the pre-order because they will go for an absolutely a bananas price in the aftermarket. So,
have you played any Fabrizio's games?
I have not. No. So I got the 1985 games, Under an Iron Sky, Deadly Northern Lights, and Sacred Oil, and they look good. I mean, it's kind of an evolution of the old Next War system, which is a Jim Dunnigan, Mark Herman game from about 1980 or 81 from SPI. Though Fabrizio and his crew were playing that and they were documenting it on the old G+ wargaming group. It eventually evolved away enough that it's its own game now, right? So On to Richmond 2 is 165 for pre-order. That is correct, and I have no qualms about paying that whatsoever for that game.
So man,
because I will play it.
So today, paying $100 for a game is it's
so
what it is.
There's a lot of factors, right? There are persistent logistical challenges, and we're still dealing with the after effects of those. Now, a lot of like the commodity prices, like the price of wood, has gone down. But if you go to Home Depot and look at the price of lumber, that price change has not yet trickled down to them, right?
No shit.
GMT is now going to be doubling up the blocks so they could ship 10 less blocks with a Commands and Colors game, right? They're doubling up the boxes after this next print run. So for Commands and Colors Napoleonics, that is, they've already been doing that with Commands and Colors Ancients, and none of the other Commands and Colors games from GMT have enough material for them to do that, but those two definitely do. So, I mean, we all, you know, kind of cringe when we see this, right? $125 or whatever. But the fact is that really only GMT is producing big war games anyway at anything like that price point anymore.
Yeah.
Nobody else is doing that. And that's you know, again, there's a lot of factors there. One is just economy of scale, right? GMT is probably, I should ask Mark. He might actually be able to tell us, but Mark might not know because he's not in charge of that either. How many copies of Pacific War they printed? I would venture to say that it might have been as many as 10,000.
10,000?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, they didn't have that many pre-orders, but they had like 3,000, 3 or 3,500 pre-orders. I mean, at that point, why not, right? And Mark has said that he expects it to sell out, although I have not observed that it has gone out of print yet. So I mean, so John Longshore says that there's so many games coming out and they're expensive, and I'm not disputing that games are expensive, right? It's a luxury hobby, right? But he's of the mindset to wait a year for the reviews and errata to settle down. So in general, I think it's good advice to tell people to wait, right? To wait and see what the reviews are like, blah, 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 blah. So you have a clear...
And then it sells out. And then it sells out.
See, that's the problem. When you get something like a Thin Red Line game where, well, you really can't just wait, can you? You're either buying it when it's available, or you're not buying it, or you're paying some ruinous price on the third-party market. But even GMT has that happen, right? Atlantic Chase sold out very quickly, for example.
Yeah.
Extremely well received. And that's not the only example from GMT. NATO, The Cold War Goes Hot from Compass is sold out already. That just came out in that's 2021 release, actually. But
Atlantic Chase, wasn't that a big surprise that it was that good?
Well, no, I mean, I wouldn't use the word surprise particularly. I mean, Jeremy White generally does really good games. So, you know, in that sense, no, we weren't surprised. But what I think is the game changer for that game, and honestly, maybe we should do a whole show on this, is, you know, just how next level the presentation of that game is. And I'm not talking about component quality. The component quality is pretty much standard GMT quality. Same paper, same wooden pieces, same, you know, same amount of map board, all that stuff. It's the presentation design of that game that really blows. It's next level, right? It could represent a seismic shift in the way we present war games. It's not really going to affect the groggy hex encounter games, to be completely honest. But for a company like GMT, I mean, I would hope they're looking at that and saying, hey, we've got a lot of these war games that have crossover appeal. We should really be trying to leverage these new presentational techniques that Jeremy White has shown us now with Atlantic Chase. And there's, of course, a second printing of that coming as well.
You think David Thompson is a kind of a guy like that who's going to make changes?
What do you mean changes? Changes?
Changes. Like he's going to set a new standard. Like Jeremy White. What you're saying? I mean,
I think one can make a case that maybe David already has, right? David is generally not working with. His games are innovative and novel, and presentationally they're very strong. But it's going to be difficult to make comparisons between, you know, a fresh look at how to present a war game. It's going to be difficult to compare any other game to Atlantic Chase in that regard. Kilroy of Kilroy Was Here is here.
What's up, Bobby?
Not only was he here, he is here. So it's
Bobby. I need a video.
Meandering Mike has a what looks like a comprehensive survey of States of Siege games up. I think today. That looks great. I have that queued up to watch later on. So I have not seen Meandering Mike. Now, this is Roger says he doesn't want to spend big money for a half-baked game, and this is a completely reasonable statement, right? I mean, how you are being asked whether you think the expense is worth it. These are separate questions, right? If I say, okay, I have no qualms about paying $165, or frankly, even $229 or whatever it is, the retail price for On to Richmond 2. I have no qualms about that at all. But part of that calculus is that I have confidence that the development team and the publisher and the designers and all that are going to make sure that we get a high quality product with minimal problems. It's a well-established series that I am already more than fully invested in, considering it's this one series that I warehouse duplicate copies of. Technically, that's not true. I have 2 copies of Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2, but MMP generally, of like the bigger name publishers, and in that group, I think I'm talking about GMT, of course, which is probably an order of magnitude bigger than any other publisher doing war games right now. But Hexagon war games anyway. MMP, Compass, and Decision. And of those, I think the standard of development and playtesting is highest at MMP and lowest in a shocking development, Decision games. Decision, I feel, has been working on that, but you know, we're still starting to see the ramifications of their additional dedication to playtesting and development. And as Meandering Mike points out, there's a highly invested fan community at Multiman that is assisting. Is anybody seeing flickering on my screen, by the way? Maybe that's an artifact over here.
Yes.
Well, I'd like to know if the viewers are seeing it or if it's just StreamYard picking it up, because if so, I'm blaming AMD again. But there's a MMP has I think shown a better facility than other publishers at leveraging the engagement of their own fans, right? I guess and a more interesting question, or at least another interesting question, might be that is that limited to the gamers, or possibly the gamers and advanced squad leader, or is that a multi-man phenomenon? And I think the answer is that it is in fact an ASL and or the gamers phenomenon rather than a multi-man phenomenon. Although, you know, there have been some of the international game series, which is like, it's not formally this, but it tends to be the other non-series multi-man publishing games, right? And those generally release pretty strong too, but possibly not quite as airtight as something like an OCS game might. So Strelnikov says no flickering on his end, so that's good.
Yeah, I see flickering.
Okay, so I'm seeing it in StreamYard, so I don't know if I'm seeing it. I'm not watching. Excuse me, I'm not watching OBS, so I don't know if it's OBS picking it up or not.
I had highlighted Jeff Beeler's comment. 56
AMD.
$50 to $60 Canadian. Jeff, bloody hell, you ain't gonna get squatski with that. I mean, a magazine game with shipping is $80 here.
Well, I mean that's plausible, right? But on the again, on the other hand, if we look at, well, you go to the movies, right? You go to the movies for 2 hours, and you get 2 hours worth of entertainment, and you paid what do movie tickets cost now Canadian? About $700-800. I mean, so let's call it $20 in the U.S. and here in Ohio. I think that's typical, but it might actually be a little low nowadays. I haven't gone to see a movie in like 4 years.
I haven't seen a movie in 10 years.
So if you think about it, you're paying $10 an hour for entertainment when you go to the movies. Okay, I mean, exactly. Everybody wants to watch this stuff at home now. I got a decent sized TV. I can watch it at home.
Right.
So if you think about that, you know, I pay. Let's take an extreme example. Let's say I gotta have a shrink wrapped copy of Case Blue because my copy is missing 33 counters, and it is. So let's say I gotta have a shrink wrapped copy of Case Blue, and I pay $1,000 for it. But then let's say you could get $1,000 for a copy of Case Blue. Does every copy go for that? No, but that's going to start at about 800. I'm just making the number right nice and round so the math is easy. And let's say that I play Case Blue, and I spend 300 hours on it, and I think that is possibly a little bit low. I think it might take more like 400 or 500 hours to play that, to play through the whole campaign, right? I'm paying about $3 1/3 per hour of entertainment at that absolutely bananas price. Okay.
Yeah, but is that how people rate war games at entertainment value?
I generally think that that's not the case. People just look at the out of pocket expense at the time, right? The $20 to go to the movies doesn't seem very expensive unless you got 5 kids and it's $100. But you know, we ought to consider that, right? So let's take as our less outlandish example. Let's say one has paid the $250 for the pre-order of The Greatest Day Utah Beach, which is another game I have no compunction about paying for it because I have very high confidence that it'll be great. And let's say that, and I think this estimate is solid because I think you could play that in a convention. So let's say we play that at a convention for 6 days, and we play for 10 hours a day. That's 60 hours. So we're going to divide $250 by 60. That's about $4 an hour for entertainment. So now, if you're going to use Netflix and you're going to pay 15 or 16, it's about $16 with tax here in Ohio, at least for Netflix. And you watch 3 movies a month, then yeah, you could beat the movie theater price. But, people do complain about the price of movie tickets too. But, we're talking about kind of the same thing here, right? This is a good point. Soda's what, $6-7 at the movie theater, something like that. And again, if you got 3 kids, you're buying sodas and popcorn and jujubes and all that for them as well. So,
and that's a $200 night, man.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's why people don't go to the movies. Normal people don't go to the movies anymore. So, John, this was a special movie night, I guess. I mean, there's other things happening beside the movie. That's what you're spending. So I mean, Jeff points out. I also do appreciate the additional challenges that people in places like Canada and Australia are trading for their socialized medicine. In terms of getting war games, right? So you get, you need a kidney transplant. They got you covered, but you want to buy a copy of Pacific Core, you might have to pay $50 to ship it there. But as Jeff indicates here, there is some shopping you can do in Canada, right? There are locals, and this is true of Europe too. Australia, you're kind of just hosed. But there are, local distribution points for a lot of this stuff, and whether that is like a formal where GMT has set up a Euro-friendly shipping option through whoever it is. I think it might still be Second Chance Games. I don't know. But a lot of there's other retailers that you could order from online in Europe that you could get MMP stuff through, for example. Now, you're not getting the pre-order price, but you're also, the VAT's already taken care of and dealt with and all that stuff. So,
Jeff, where's Tadnak Games?
Tadnak Games is in Nova Scotia or New Brunswick or someplace like that.
Really?
Yeah, it's out east, East Canada, something like that. I forget where Pete's at. That's Pete Bartlett. And plus there's those guys in Montreal and the Century Box in Calgary, which is like the only game store within 2,000 miles, I'm pretty sure. So they better be good, but they're supposed to be really good. Why don't you just drive out to Calgary for your games, Dan?
Yeah. Those guys in Montreal, Le Valet de Coeur, they ship all through Canada for $5.
So that's pretty good, right?
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
So Jeff says that Tadnak Games is in Nova Scotia.
Okay, do you know where, Jeff, in Nova Scotia? Because my wife is from around Yarmouth. 3 hours from Halifax.
Now this is completely fair, right? So Doug's actually doing some like actual mathematical modeling here, right? So the big assumption in my calculation is that you're going to play the game, right? If it's going to sit on your shelf, then that math works out very differently, right? And I'd like to say I buy games that I'm going to play, and that's notionally correct, but it's, at the same time, I'm full of shit too, right? I buy a lot of stuff that I'm probably not going to play. I bought a copy of Edelweiss from Noble Knight, right? Am I going to play that? Very unlikely. I really wanted to take a look at it though, and take a look at the rules because it looks like a very mechanically interesting game. I actually think that this is a fair point. I mean, if you are considering yourself entertained or engaged by reading the rules, then yeah, you should count the time reading the rules. So So does TEDNet Games have a website? That is not a thing.
Yeah, no, I'm on my iPad. I don't want to screw it up. I'm gonna
No,
cut
I
everything.
got it.
Everything's done.
Currently, there's a TEDNet. Yeah, they are TEDNet Games Canada in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Halifax. That's 3 hours from where my wife lives.
So I'll put a link in the chat here because why not? But yeah, that's Pete Bartlett. Pete's a good guy. So I was lucky enough to meet Pete at Winter Offensive a couple years ago. It was the last Winter Offensive before the upcoming Winter Offensive, which is like 2 weeks from now, something like that. So, well, there you go. Dan has now given us full. Jeff has now given us full information about TEDNet Games. This is an interesting point. I mean, you often can get the rules for free, but often you can't get all the rules for free, right? So one example would be, and I'm not going to get into this particular Compass Games policy, but Absolute Victory, right? The rules are online, but it's only part of the rules. And the event books that you kind of really are kind of the heart of that game are not online. So if you want to like have all the rules in electronic format so you can read them on a tablet, which is something I do, I prefer to read. I prefer when I'm doing rules reading that be on a tablet as opposed to like referencing the book at the actual table, in which case I prefer to have a physical copy. Whether that is a physical copy that came in a box or because I printed it myself, I don't really care about that. So, this is actually an interesting. Roger Hempstead raised an interesting question here. I wonder what like the smallest really expensive war game would be. That's an interesting question.
Look,
Now I can come
decision
up with like
game.
novelty games that I know are worth a bunch of money, right? Like Up Against the Wall, Motherfucker, for example. Early Jim Dunnigan design. Not joking. So that's probably worth some change. So Manders is here in the house. Thank you. Welcome. These go for decent money, actually. Those that series of 3 games, I think, that covers the 1862 Peninsula Campaign, which is where Robert E. Lee became became Robert E. Lee, as it were, right? So, well, Jeff says Hollandspiele games are pricey for what you get. Well, I would try and apply that same logic though. Andrew says that Black Magic goes for big money, but I don't think we're remotely considering that a war game. So,
is that Avalon Hill?
Yeah, so we did the Best of Avalon Hill last night. If you haven't seen that show, check it out. We went
I will.
from 1982 to 1972 to 1978. In the 70s was when Avalon Hill got away from the we are only going to release 1 or 2 games a year thing. So we got rather less far than I had hoped. So we're going to do at least 1, more than likely 2, and possibly even 3 more episodes until we get to the end of Avalon Hill in 1998 when they get bought by Hasbro.
What year are you at right now?
1978.
Those are interesting years, man.
Well, yeah, we really started to get into. I mean, I found it very interesting because we started to get into a period in which there's a lot of war games, and a higher ratio of those games are things that I've played, which is also nice because I have something to say about them. That's not just me talking and observing neutrally, right? Jason Williams is about to pick up a copy of Magic Realm. Now,
so
yes.
Why is that game so coveted?
That's a good question. Was that a Richard Hamblin game? That's what.
Isn't he an actor?
No. I'm not sure who that is. Richard Hamblin. I'm actually correct. So I'm not really sure, right? It was like really high complexity rating back at from Avalon Hill today. I mean, I caution people to take that piece of information with a grain of salt, but because there's no like scientific, quantitative measure of that, right? They're asking the designer and the designer says, right? So And it's pretty complicated. It's got a lot of pieces. It was an Avalon Hill flat box, which and it was one of those flat boxes like Flat Top that was basically packed completely solid. So if you want to like buy Magic Realm, it's kind of hard to find in a condition where the box is not completely flattened. Again, like Flat Top, and if you are at that point, but it's a fantasy game that came out right when fantasy games were really taking off. It's a 1979 release. So it's actually going to be toward the beginning of the next show. I guess I'll mention this. So the next Avalon Hill show will be in 2 weeks from yesterday. Next week's Counterclipping show will be the benefit and fundraiser show for Mark Ruggiero, who I'm not sure who has heard this, but Mark and his wife both have cancer. And there's a GoFundMe to help raise some money to help pay their medical bills. And Mark's talking about selling off a bunch of games, because he doesn't feel he's going to have time to play them. And we're all in that position. I got more games than I'm going to get to. And to help defray medical expenses. So we'll have Mark on next week. We're going to sell, I don't know, 15, 20 games or something like that of Mark's. And then I got nothing to do with it other than talking. You send the money to Mark. Mark ships the happy package to you. So tune in next Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. I think, see, this is kind of how, because I never played Magic Realm, but I kind of looked at it eagerly for quite a while, right? Because it looks neat, right? It's D&D as a board game, right? But nowadays there's like a lot of that. There's like D&D board games that are made by the D&D people, and other people like Descent have done basically D&D as a board game. Or if you really want D&D as a board game, you can play D&D 4th edition, right? So I feel like there's just too much competition for Magic Realm to be a serious contender in that space right now. A lot of people did like it. I think there's some cool ideas in it. But I think it's also probably more trouble than it's worth, both from a rules learning standpoint, because the rule book's supposed to not be very good, and from it's going to cost you some change to go get a copy. Now, last I looked at this, which has been quite a while, is there was enough stuff that you could print and play yourself a copy of Magic Realm floating around. So, bear that in mind. The legality of that is I will leave up to the legal department over at Board Game Geek. So that is not my thing. So,
hey Artie, what's Doug saying here? There's audiobooks on war game rules.
So I am unaware of anybody actually doing that. Audiobook version, see the review. So there's two Phil Barkers, okay? There's the British miniatures guy, Phil Barker. And there's the American linguistics professor, MAR, aka Phil Barker, who was a professor of East Asian languages or something, South Asian or something like that at the University of Minnesota for quite a while, and who was revealed sometime in 2022 to have been a closet Nazi, like actual card carrying.
For God's sake, man.
So that was a fun revelation, right? This is the guy who did the very early RPG, Empire of the Petal Throne. So just to get that out here, we're talking about presumably the British Phil Barker and not the American Phil Barker. Very similar situation to Steve Jackson. There's a British Steve Jackson and an American Steve Jackson. They're completely different people. They're both real important people, though. Magic Realm is a creature of its time. Absolutely. It was a time when complexity wasn't seen as something undesirable. So not every game was super complicated, right? But it wasn't really seen as a challenging if the game was super complicated, and it was. And frankly, what is it competing with? D&D? D&D at the time is really complicated, right? 1979, it's advanced D&D era. That's a complicated game, okay?
Now, why is it complicated? Why is D&D complicated?
Because there's a lot of rules, and there's a different rule for everything. Every spell is its own rule. For example, you want to do combat? Well, that's fine. You can do combat. You want to do subdual combat? That's a different rule. You want to grapple or wrestle or whatever? That's a different rule. And in fact, there were like multiple different unarmed combat systems in the first edition Dungeon Master's Guide. And nobody understood any of them.
But don't you flip the page and you read a paragraph and that's that for dual combat?
Yeah, but remember that's considered disruptive to play, right? I mean, it is in war games too, but it's more disruptive in an RPG. So, and I mean, not that it doesn't happen. Of course, it does happen, but ideally, you do all that prep and rules reading ahead of time, and don't disrupt the session with it. So Roger, none of us have, especially Dan. I mean, I'm doing pretty good, but Dan, look at him. I mean, look at that. Look at that forehead. Holy Jesus. So I mean, this is a problem. If it's this is what is sometimes referred to as the Monopoly problem, actually, in that you have a long game in which characters can be either eliminated or effectively eliminated very early on. And that sucks, right? That's seen as undesirable from a game design standpoint nowadays. And frankly, I think that's a good instinct. I think that is something to be avoided. It's one of the several reasons why Monopoly sucks. So Dan does have character. He is a character, in fact. Quite a character. So I had a buddy who was listening to your show, and he's like, who does he have who did some music at the beginning of the show? Is that Nectar? And I'm like, no, that's Dan.
Well, I'm flattered.
Yeah, that's what I told him. I said, yeah, Dan's a big prog rock guy. So I think Doug is talking about, for what it's worth, I think Doug is talking about Magic Realm rather than D&D. The reason why a lot of people don't realize D&D is as complicated as it is, and I'm talking about first edition AD&D here, right? Different editions, this is true to a different extent. As a player, you need to know very little of that, right? You make a character, you roll some dice, you pick equipment, and you pick a class and a race,
right?
And maybe write some stuff down. But at the game, the person running the game should ideally know a lot more about how the system works than the players necessarily need to. So this is true, but Sorcerer is a really weird looking game, right? Super interesting looking game for what it's worth. Now I want to see who designed Sorcerer, actually. Oh, geez.
Artie, what about that pink box game with the 2 dragons there? Art by Nunez or something? What's it called, that game? Avalon Hill.
With the pink box. Titan? Are you talking about Titan?
Titan, yeah.
Oh, that's a great game. That's a design by, there's a co-designer too. But one of the designers was Dave Trampier, who was one of the iconic early D&D artists that basically completely dropped off the face, literally dropped off the face of the earth at one point. BGG credits Dave Trampier and Jason McAllister, but I don't know what that sounds like. Avalon Hill did it. They actually, the original publisher was pretty much Dave Trampier and Jason McAllister. That was Gorgon Star Publications, actually, and then Avalon Hill picked it up. Valley Games did a fancy new edition, but I don't want the Valley Games edition because it doesn't have the Dave Trampier art. And Dave Trampier passed away a few years ago now. So, and he did the iconic AD&D First Edition Player's Handbook cover with the demon idol where the guys are prying the eyes out and stuff like that. It's an iconic cover. Jeff has done us a favor and dug this up. Sorcerer is an interesting looking game. Graphically, it is weird, right? I think Redmond Simonson must have been being somewhat experimental there.
Yeah.
But assuming he did the graphic design, and I would assume he did in the absence of other information, Simonson did a couple of very interesting games. I believe he was the designer of Star Force as well, which is also a very interesting game. Sorcerer, I mean, look at the Board Game Geek entry for Sorcerer, and just read the description, and then you're like, wow, this is not exactly what I thought it was. So I haven't played Titan in ages. It's another of those Avalon, and I mentioned this a lot in the course of doing the best of Avalon Hill. A lot of those Avalon Hill games take longer to play than they really ought to based on the kinds of games that they are, right? And Titan is not. Civilization is one of those. Victor the Pacific is one of those. My dog is terrified of Dan. I don't know if you guys know that, but yes, exactly. Lando Molari. What do you want, you moon-faced assassin of joy?
I love Lando.
The greatest line in television history.
I love Lando.
Yeah, this might have been why it looks so weird. Redmond Simons is sitting in an office like, I got all these colors. I got to use them, right? I mean, that is very plausible.
I'm telling you, Redmond Simonson was an experimenter of chemicals.
I have no information to that effect.
Right.
But if you look at Sorcerer, you might get that impression. It does have a somewhat psychedelic appearance.
And what about Time Tripper?
I'm not sure I've ever really looked at the components of Time Tripper, but that's a Dunnigan design, right?
Oh, sorry.
It was
sorry.
the 70s. You don't know what those guys were up to. So there's a funny story that Chris Promise told on Twitter several years ago, and I keep getting this retweeted at me, and I'm like, I am aware of this conversation. Thank you, person, and thank you, Chris, because I participated in the original conversation. So City Fight, I believe. Let me check. Let me see to make sure if it was City Fight that I'm thinking of. I think it was. So if you look up SPI's City Fight, you'll find out that the designer of City Fight is Stephen Donaldson. Joe Bukowski is credited on the box or on BGG as well, but and on the box for that matter. But Stephen Donaldson had a hand in a number of SPI things, right, including Next War. Actually, Roger McGowan actually posted the other day a image of an old little letter or article or whatever that Mark had written for Fire and Movement that mentions the development of Next War and how Stephen Donaldson, or as he was known, Donnie the Punk. Stephen Donaldson, this is not the same Stephen Donaldson as the fantasy author Stephen Donaldson, by the way, had a very, very interesting career, and you can find his life story on Wikipedia. But he is also no longer with us. But all the like the individual fighting units or men, it's a man-to-man game in City Fight, are named after members of prominent punk bands.
Time Tripper, Mike, are you saying that what about the game? Is the game boring?
Well, I hope it's not, because you paid a giant pile of Canadian money for it.
Did I? Forgot.
You said you did at the time.
Oh.
Why
I got so many games I have to play, man.
It is Time Tripper, right?
Yeah.
Why is BGG not pulling this up for me?
Yeah, the game is fun. Great. I'm happy you said that, because, excuse me, I want to play it just because it's a very acid game, very mushroomy game.
I'm not sure that's really the case graphically, though. I'm trying to pull an image up of it here, and to be honest, that is the thing that I am not interested in particularly. I'm having problems pulling that up on BGG for whatever reason. Time Tripper is 2 words. I'm putting it in that way. I just put Tripper in. The only thing that comes up is some other game called Time Tripper, which is not the same game at all. And there's too many games with the time travel theme on BGG for me to be able to reliably find anything. So that's deeply unfortunate, but whatever. That's what we got. So thank you, BGG.
What's wrong with reviewing the game and saying it's fun? Huh? I swear to God, that guy.
Who says that's a problem?
What's a problem?
Time Tripper is 1 word. That is
1 word.
That's why I wasn't finding it. Yeah, I'd call this graphically pretty dull, to be honest. Vietnam,
the graphics are not the best.
Single soldiers teleported through time and space to battle everything from T-Rexes to Hell's Angels to psionic flesh-eating plants. That does sound a bit trippy, doesn't it?
Just a bit, huh?
Yeah, but the map is very pedestrian looking.
Yeah, it's like the Starship Troopers, man. The map is like.
It's an interesting looking map. We looked at it last night on the Best of Avalon Hill. It's an interesting looking map. I wouldn't call it an attractive map by modern standards. Let me put it there.
Did you ever play that game?
Yeah, back in the day, but I really don't remember very much about it other than liking it better than Star Soldier. SPI.
Star Soldier. SPI, okay. Never get out of the boat. Who said that?
Is that from Apocalypse Now?
Oh yeah, that's right. Never get out of the boat. That's right.
Yeah, Star Soldier was designed by Tom Walchick. Interesting. So BGG says that it's one of a series. It's part of the Sniper series, and that does not sound right to me, to say the least. I mean, Star Soldier is pretty clearly influenced by the book Starship Troopers. I think that's a fair and reasonable statement to make, right? But I think that the Avalon Hill Starship Troopers is just a better game than Star Soldier is. And there's not a single lecture in the game either. So there have been multiple Doctor Who games. There's a Doctor Who
RPG
from somebody right now, Cubicle 7.
Isn't it Nuts Publishing or something?
No, definitely not.
No.
Nuts Publishing, to my knowledge, does not do RPGs.
No, actually, they did one. I have it. It's
okay. Well, I'd be curious to know what the Nuts guys got up to with RPGs.
All right.
So, yeah, this is my belief, right? So, I mean, you know, SPI did a lot of little small games, right? And they were selling them for, this is a problem, right? For everybody, not just SPI who's selling these fucking things at a loss, which they were, right? They were actually selling them less than it cost them to make. And obviously that's an issue, and that highlights the fact that they apparently didn't know that. That's a problem, right? That they're not tracking their own expenses like that. But you know, there's a lot of there has always been, it has always been perceived that there is a lot of room in the wargaming space for small, compact, fast games, right? Thus the, you know, and there are examples throughout the course of the hobby. GMT has never been really big about doing stuff like that, but they have occasionally done a Ziploc game or something like that. It's been a long time since they have. You know, the Decision Folio and mini games is one obvious example of something that's happening right now in that space. So the you know, I wonder how well those sell, and whether the margins, the profit margin on that is fundamentally different than it is for, say, a big boxed war game. I don't know. I mean, we still keep seeing them, so Decision seems to be doing pretty well with them, and some of them are pretty good. I'll say that some of the I've got about 4 Decision Folios or minis, and I think 2 of them are good, and the other 2 are turds. So
hey, we should do that. We should do a show on the folios from Decision games.
We could, but I'd want to get somebody involved like Stigler who knows way more about them than I do. Because like I said, they've got like, I don't know, 80 of them or something like that, and I've only got like 4. And I picked those based on interest in the topic. And some of them are series, right, where you could buy multiple folios and sometimes they'll be like a folio size game and a mini size game. The minis are the little ones. The folios are like the 8.5.
Right.
And they're a little more expensive, but they're relatively inexpensive, right? They're cheaper than your average magazine game now, including from Decision, because you're paying for the magazine too. So Stigler's probably just sitting in front of his TV at home with a cold beer, laughing his ass off because he's watching C-SPAN. That is my guess. That's what Stigler is up to at this exact moment. So, 20th Maine, yeah, this is a good call. It was a pretty good small game in its later form too, as I recall, and in fact, Avalon Hill even got in on this action to some extent with stuff. I showed these off last night, then I put them away. These are the only 2 that I have. Is Battle for Italy and 100 Days Battles. These are very compact. I'll show this off, right? Mounted maps too in these things. It's absolutely bananas.
STUKAJOE's in the house.
STUKAJOE is here. Joe, welcome. Thanks. Always.
You know, maybe he knows a lot about folio and mini games.
Actually, that's good catch on that. So this is the map. It's a mounted map. Unfortunately, this is from the era where Avalon Hill was doing a very bad job at mounted maps. So you pretty much got to put this under Plexi too. But this is an interesting looking, this is the Campaigns of Napoleon system. which is, you know, here's the counter sheet. It's a half a counter sheet, right? With, you know, pretty far from the worst looking Avalon Hill counters I've ever seen. Here's the rules. It's a half size, little digest size. Looks like about 16 digest size pages. So it's roughly 8 pages of rules, right? Small, easy to play. You could easily put this in your luggage, getting on an airplane or something like that. Obviously, you don't have. Oops, I forgot to put the board back in. Just now, I want to check to see if the board in Battle of Fridley is just as warped as the board in 100 Days Battles, because 100 Days Battles. The Battle of Fridley came with the Avalon Hill idiosyncratic D6, which is always fun to get. I've got
anything from Italy is warped.
I've got a fascinatingly few of those, to be completely honest. Battle Fridley is actually much smaller. It's got a half counter sheet, but more than half of the counters on this are just blanks. Matte finish counters, which I rather like. And interestingly, this is another one of those sort of cardboard boards that they did. And this one is not nearly as warped as the other one. This is the one I got on eBay not that long ago. Somebody at Compass Expo gave me the copy of 100 Days Battles. Thank you. So,
hey, STUKAJOE.
I'll tell you what, my hair does that too if I don't get a haircut in a long enough time. So,
STUKAJOE, do you know a lot about folio games and mini games from the Decision Games? Maybe we should have Doc Cummings on.
Oh, that would be a delight. And Stigler. I only agree to have Doc on if Stigler comes on too. Okay, so just to get that out. But also, I'm pretty sure that if I emailed Doc and asked him that question, he would look at the email and say, "Who is this guy?" and just ignore me. So, because that is Doc's response to other correspondence that I have sent him. So,
I mean, doesn't he say that of his wife? I'm joking. I'm joking.
His wife's a very nice lady. I have had nothing but positive things to say about Callie Cummins.
I didn't mean any disrespect.
You don't want to insult the man's wife or his mother. You know that. Dan is the mad wizard of wargaming. The Robin Hood game, that might have come. That might have come from OSG as well.
That's Avalon Hill.
Yeah, but it came from somebody else. All the little mini Avalon Hills came from elsewhere.
Okay, so STUKAJOE says
game was God, there's 50 million games called Robin Hood. How about that? I'm shocked.
STUKAJOE says he's got most of the games, but he's never played them. Okay,
yeah,
Joe, you got a week. You got a week to play them all.
Yeah, Legend of Robin Hood came from OSG as well, and it's Joe Bizio design. And it's a colorful area map. Colorful in not entirely a positive way, and it's got, you know, another half counter sheet with a decent number of blanks on it. But you know, that's probably pretty fun, right? And I don't remember what those sold for back in the day, to be completely honest. I think he's right. Yeah, that's a good point. I think Avalon Hill did do a larger format Robin Hood game that was not well regarded. It'd be interesting exercise to collect all of those little Avalon Hill minis. Actually,
I love them.
I've only got the 2. So, but I mean, they're interesting. I think because of their because they stick to the Avalon Hill format, right? They're in a box. They got a mounted map. They got like a regular half counter sheet in them. Some of them are kind of noodly, right? I mean, Campaigns of Napoleon's a little bit noodly. So. No, I mean, I got no issues with them for as far as support for like errata counters and stuff like that. I have sent a couple emails his way and have not received a response of any kind. So he's, you know, famously curmudgeonly at their booth at Origins, for instance.
Yeah, he was a WBC, and I met him once, and he thought I was a hobbit.
He's a WBC. Did he say that?
No, because I would have kicked him right in the fucking balls.
You would have headbutted him right in the balls. So there you go. So are you drinking Rolling Rock out of a wine glass or a sherry capita?
No, I'm actually drinking Lot 40 Canadian whiskey. That's my wife's Christmas bottle. Every Christmas she buys a Canadian whiskey, which they're becoming really good.
There are good Canadian whiskeys. I can vouch for that Legacy whiskey that Mo buys, which is, very good for like a $12 bottle of whiskey or $15 or whatever.
$12,
something like that. Yeah, that's U.S.
You
dollars.
talk-
So that's like $247 in Canadian money, I believe.
Yeah. Like this bottle's $80, man. What are you talking about? $12? That's not. It ain't rubby booze.
Well,
for
$80.
God's sake.
$80 is like $2.99 here in the U.S. So
Whatever.
lot 40 is supposed to be good. There's nothing that says Canadian whiskey has to be terrible swill, right? There's good
What the
Canadian-
hell?
There's no. I'm just saying there are those who say rumors have said sources indicate that Canadian whiskey is just paint thinner, but this is not true. There is good Canadian whiskey. You just have to know what you're looking for. 40 Creek Rye is supposed to be good. Now, Canadian rye is a little different than American rye, right? Legally, the category is different. American rye has got to be at least 51% rye. Canadian rye does not. So if you really like rye, you might get a lot of rye in your Canadian rye. And
Yes. We're rye. When you say rye, it's as soon as you drink it, it's like this.
STUKAJOE says that Decision's got a special sale. Is that their sale of the month? Do they have that up for January? Because $30 for a magazine game ain't bad. Dan, you could order some magazine games and then pay additionally $30 each to ship them to you.
Jesus Christ.
So there's that.
I want magazine games. People, send me magazine games, for God's sakes.
I got some old app, and it just doesn't cost me any less to ship stuff to you, unfortunately.
It costs you a fortune.
You're talking. Bucko's talking about $2 Chuck.
What the hell is $2 Chuck?
$2 Chuck is a shitty beer.
Where does he live, fucko?
Ohio.
He lives in Ohio. Does he?
Yeah.
I swear to God.
He's got excellent taste. So if you live in a state where Costco can sell liquor, it's a great place to buy liquor. Unfortunately, Ohio is not one of those states. So
Liquor? I don't even know her.
Oh, Jesus. I knew that was coming. Yeah, that's true. That's why Dollar General is now $2 General. So $3 Chuck is a wine. Okay, well, I don't drink it, so it's all good. There was somebody on the internet somewhere. This was years ago. I don't know if this is still around. That was going through all of the terrible, I just want to drink until I black out and destroy my life and end up in the drunk tank. Wine and fortified wines and all that stuff like Thunderbird and that. And those reviews were hilarious.
What? Don't believe Carl. Carl doesn't drink. He doesn't know anything. Shut up.
I haven't really ever shopped at Trader Joe's. I mean, I've been in there, but well, there you go. Getting into a convention is a great experience. For war gamers at this point, I feel like smaller conventions are where the action is going to be at. Conventions that are specifically wargaming conventions. If you want to do other stuff, by all means, go to Origins or Gen Con or Dragon Con or whatever. But if you want to do wargaming, you're better served, generally speaking, unless your idea of wargaming is just playing probably Struggle or Combat Commander all the time, which is fine, right? That's wargaming. But unless that kind of stuff is what you're specifically interested in, then you are not going to be particularly well served by going to a big multi-purpose convention like Origins anymore. And Brand,
are you going to be doing a con soon?
So I'm doing the Armchair Dragoons digital convention, which is an MLK.
No, I'm talking about at your place. I'm talking like call it the hook.
No, not soon. That's 2024, Dan. We're going to be doing work for that this year. ArdyCon or ArdWULF'S or whatever.
I thought you were going to call it Hookers and Blow.
We might have trouble getting the hotel to sign us the contract. STUKAJOE's go to El Biota Con. That looks like a fantastic event, by the way, in Spain, of course.
Name drop.
Whose name are we dropping?
He's dropping Biota Con, Spain. The guy's always traveling.
If
Yeah,
I if
he
I
never
if I'm going
works.
to convention, I'm going to tell you that's what we do here. We talk about war games. That includes the convention, right?
But the guy never works. STUKAJOE's always traveling.
And there
God's
is like a
sakes.
convention in Seattle called Game On, and I think this Oregon thing is a spinoff of that. I think it's called something like Game Con or something like that, or Oregon Con or something like that. I forget. But yeah, there's a new war game convention starting up in Oregon somewhere. So just make sure you get your gas before you hit the border, so you're allowed to pump it yourself. You guys have that in Canada where you're not allowed to pump your own gas?
No.
Yeah, New Jersey and Oregon, that is the case. You're not allowed to pump your own gas.
Why?
I don't know. You have to talk to the state legislatures of New Jersey and Oregon. I don't live there. Well, how would I know? It's goofy, I tell you that. Yeah, so I mean, there's 4 wargaming events happening that weekend, apparently. There's Winter Offensive, which is MMP's event, which is in Bowie, Maryland, or near Bowie, Maryland anyway. And which is near Baltimore, by the way, because all of Maryland is near Baltimore. And there is this new thing in Game More, right, in Oregon. There's something else that I don't know what it is, and there's the Armchair Dragoons online convention. So I mean, I'm like, you know, you guys can schedule this whenever you want. The whole point is that people can come from wherever. You want somebody from France wants to come to your digital convention and play Combat Command? Well, you know, yeah, great. So why try to do it when a bunch of other people are doing their conventions? So,
you know, at the Stack Academy in Montreal, it's always a big Combat Commander thing.
now I've heard good things about that convention, but I believe it to be a general purpose convention rather than a war game convention, or at least a hybrid, you know, wargaming including miniatures convention.
Well, it has become that because how many war gamers do you think are in Montreal, for God's sakes?
I would assume a decent number, considering there's a decent number in Columbus, Ohio. Montreal's a bigger city than Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, but
quite a bit more. Well, Columbus is more cosmopolitan than people might think, but you know, it's still Bumpkinburg, right?
You know, the thing is that if you're a traveler and you come into Montreal, what are you going to play, a war game, or you go hookers and blow? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, honestly, am I really going to go to you know, honey, I really could use some hookers and blow this weekend. Let's go to Montreal. I'm not sure that's a conversation that really happens. I mean, if that's what your goal is for the weekend, probably you're going to Vegas or Tijuana or something like that. That's my supposition.
Sorry. Come to Montreal.
The hookers and blow in Montreal might be fabulous, for all I know.
Yeah.
So,
excuse me.
Oh, your audio quality is just total garbage, Dan. You gotta get that room de-echoed.
Sorry.
I have no information on the heroin policy in Oregon, fortunately. So
no heroin, no good.
The matters. You're in that little dangly bit, the Wang part of Maryland, apparently. Where is Jeff Beeler? Where is Sarnia? I assume that's in Ontario somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the gas is cheaper than it is in California, but the gas everywhere is cheaper than it. Well, everywhere in the adjacent states is cheaper than it is.
How much is gas right now, Artie, at your place?
Regular is last I bought gas, which was a few days ago, was about $2.89, $2.99, something like that.
It's $1.60 a liter.
Well, that's a liter though. There's two something liters in a gallon, as I recall.
There's 4 liters in a gallon.
Those are quarts.
Whatever.
Let's look up the metric to standard conversion now. Got to do all this research that I'm not prepared for. Yeah, a liter is approximately a quart, so that means that your gas is something like $6 a gallon, Canadian.
Yeah,
so that's like 22 cents US.
Look at Carl, $4.19 a gallon in Southern California, man.
$4.19 a gallon. Well, you know, there's a lot of factors there. Only one of which is actually the price of oil, right? And only one of which is the tax situation in California, where the gas taxes are higher than they are elsewhere. Population density is frankly a factor. We're getting pretty good prices on gas, unless we go to the one Circle K around the corner for some reason, where gas prices are always 50 cents more than they are everywhere else. But I'm basically in out in the boonies, right? So, you know, that's a factor, right? The demand is going to cause the prices to go up in heavily trafficked areas. So and that's the thing. People complain about the price of gas here in the United States, and without thinking that it's more literally everywhere else on the planet.
Hookers and blow, Joe. Hookers and blow. Someone's got to pay for it.
I'm glad we're on your channel to get demonetized. So, West Coast Gamers, Trevor, welcome back. Says that hookers and blow are only $5 in San Jose. They can't afford the house. So, or housing of any kind.
Hey, we passed our time by 5 minutes. What are we having fun here?
Oh, we're having a great time here. All right, folks, I got to get to see the dinner over here. Dan's got to do something like, you know, unplug his finger from the electric socket or whatever that he's doing over there in Soviet Kyrgyzstan. So, folks, we will see you next week on my channel. Same time, same station. Well, different station, but same time, right? 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Please tune in on Monday night for the counter clipping stream. We're doing a fundraiser for Mark Ruggiero. So by all means, tune into that. I'm going to mention that as much as I can, basically everywhere between now and then. So we'd like to do our best to work out. And if you can walk out of that deal with some nice war games, that's a even better, right?
Artie, give me some literature on that. I'll put it on the news Saturday because that's pretty cool.
Oh, I'll have to send you something because there is no literature on this, Dan. I literally set it up today talking to Mark. So
I just send me an email for God's sakes.
I'll send you an email.
Okay. Hey, you know what, Artie?
What?
You know what?
What?
Hold on a second.
Oh, he's fumbling for the.
I'm Dave Townsend. My friends, they just call me Dave. But some people, like Mark Herman, well, Mark, you can call me He-Man! You can call me He-Man! He-Man! You can call me He-Man! He-Man! You can call me He-Man! He-Man! You can call me He-Man!